While I'm alone and blue as can be, dream a little dream of me. So when the building burned in 2012, I was shocked for a hot minute. You know, for me, it just didn't even sink in for a while that this had happened and what it meant. A place where I would literally run around and dance and climb the walls. This solid as a fucking rock building went up in flames. Everything my family owned was in the pile of rubble. I used to dangle off these pipes. I used to just like climb them like a monkey, dude. Swing off of them. My beloved pipe. Look, there's just like a random silver keyboard. Oh, man. But like I was saying, in the month or couple weeks leading up to the building burning, I did receive that song, Dream a Little Dream of Me by the Mamas and the Papas. So I would get this like faint melody that I recognized, you know, but I couldn't place it. Then over time, it's like it got clearer or something. And I could always recognize it. I always knew that it was a song that I knew, but I just didn't know what it was, you know. And then eventually the stars fading part came. And I could then obviously Google that. And I remember going on YouTube and looking through the different versions of the song to kind of find the one. The Mamas and the Papas version of it was released in 1968. So when I got around to the part that had kept being sent to me, I felt like it clicked, it fit. It was probably that specific version of it that I was hearing. I got to thinking last night about the rest of the lyrics. Like I hadn't really thought about the rest of the lyrics, you know, but while I'm alone and blue as can be, you know, it's like, I think that that's how the place felt, basically. So I wanted to talk a little bit more about the familiar. We left off on how we said goodbye in the woods, basically, I believe before the building burned. After that, I didn't have any more psychic visitations where I saw him, you know, in the woods and stuff. I didn't have any more of those. And aside from receiving the song, I did not hear anything on that front for at least until like 2016, 17, 18. I don't even know how long, really. But I know that I've had this information that I do now have for several years at this point. When I say this new information about the familiar, I'm essentially saying just like the soul of the being that the familiar was. I cannot say much about it, but what I will say is that I do think that after the building burned, I think that the familiar took his pilgrimage to the great beyond, and I think that he reached the gates of heaven. And perhaps that's true for other, you know, ghosts or spirits that might have been stuck to that building like a magnet, you know. It could be that when it burned and was torn down and then eventually the rubble was removed, it could be that they completely were released from it, and maybe they took their pilgrimage to the great beyond too. I just know that the familiar did. There is more to that, but that's all that I can say. As far as going chronologically and recounting details of the supernatural and paranormal nature, this is it. This is the end of the line on that, you know, from roughly 1992 to 2012. That's pretty much it. Now we are going to be going into the realm of theory from here on out, and the realm of conclusions that I've made and opinions that I hold. Everything I've been telling you up to this point, of course, has involved some opinion from me and some theory too. But mainly I was just trying as well as I could to just give you the details of how I grew up, what I experienced, what it was like, and everything that I know about the place. Not only is there all of that I've told you, we also have going forward another level, a new level of exploring this. Previously to making these sessions, okay, if I'd been hit by a bus, I'd have been kind of pissed off, because that would mean that I didn't get to tell this story, recount my childhood in this place, tell you what I know about it. But today as it stands, I'm pretty pleased, and I feel like at least phase one of my duty has been completed. You know, that historical building and the place that it held, you know, in society, in the local area, just what it stood for. You know, it's like I have a duty to that, and I've done phase one of that duty. Still want to do a session where I just kind of talk about, you know, whatever comes to me regarding living here. I've also got to explain to you some other things, right, that tie into some other things that don't have anything to do with, at least I don't think, my childhood home and the paranormal and supernatural stuff surrounding that, but do have a little bit to do with, you know, those experiences that I have in life anyway. Like, I have supernatural and, well, really psychic, just tons of psychic stuff happen in my life, and to this day, you know, I always have, and so I'll have to explain that and try to make that make sense, you know, and explain to you why I'm tying them into this from this point, sort of creative artistic project that I'm going to be undertaking. So one of my notes says, you immediately know it's ghostly activity rather than anything else. Whenever you see a ghost or you hear ghost sounds or anything like that, man, it's like you instantly, innately, intuitively, like somewhere in your human, like, DNA, man, you know it's a ghost. You know it. You know it's a paranormal thing. I think it is because of whatever wavelength of light or sound or frequency of light or sound that these dimensional bleed throughs like occur on. Like, the ghosts have like a certain frequency, like all of the ghost activity comes from like a certain frequency band. Is it possible that the familiar's attempts to communicate with me and reach me psychically set off a cascade of events that led to the building being destroyed? Did the entity in conjunction with the familiar spark this sequence of events? Now that's some woo-woo shit. If you think about overloading a power station, what happens? The realm of theory is where we find ourselves from here on out. The familiar and the entity and the other spirits in this building, you know, if they were attempting to contact me, and especially the familiar, out in the woods, telling me that was as close as he could get and that it was stretching the rubber band to even be able to do that or get that close, and that he couldn't keep doing it, basically. Was it these attempts to utilize whatever power that building held and try to make it go as far as it possibly could, to try to just pull it together and stretch it out as far as it could in an attempt to psychically reach me and communicate with me? Could that have been something that sort of just like imploded the situation on an energetic level? And like, if you want to go with the theory of my home having been like a power station, that it just collected up all of this energy over a century that it stood. Early on in my life, I was right there in the building. It wasn't a big deal to do that. But when I left and I was much farther away, right, did it become a problem that they were trying to stretch so far out with this power source? Am I saying that I think that that could be plausible? No, not really. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that I genuinely, honestly think that that's what happened. Okay? Absolutely not. But I think it is so worth considering, and I think that it is so important to consider all the possibilities when it comes to paranormal and supernatural phenomena. I think we need to really open our minds. Don't open our minds so much that, you know, things fall out and like, ugh. You know, no 10-second rule on that, you know what I mean? And we don't need to get too freaking crazy off in here. But what I'm saying is, we do need to think about it. I remember, though, thinking something along those lines, you know, not long after the building burned, and putting two and two together about all of it. Just like putting two and two together about the final visitation from the familiar, putting two and two together about receiving that song psychically. There's a deep, 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 intense longingness in it. And it was like, I miss you, I miss you, I miss you. And that was what it was like. That was what it felt like. After the building burned, dude, I did go down there. At that point, the building had burnt, but it was not torn down yet. I won't talk about who I was with or anything like that, but when I had gone down there and visited and you know, we left and everything, we returned to where I lived, far away. This person was like, seems like they're trying to follow you. There was something inside of me that was like, man, you know, I wish that I could save, like, if these really are ghosts that are attached to this building and stuff, I wish that I could save them. And I wish they could, because they're homeless ghosts now, basically. I think they made it a little ways, and I think that they started to dissipate, and they just dissipated. Ghosts are attached, supposedly, you know, to a house, to a building. That's supposedly where ghosts are, you know. They haunt a room, or they haunt a corner, or they haunt, you know, a segment of the house, or you might just see them around. But at least you see them at a house, you know. So a ghost without its base, right, can't really, I don't know, what can it do, right? But it didn't seem to have been able to come with me and move in to where I lived, quite a great distance away. After it burned, like I said, you know, my dad and his friend, you know, before they tore it down, you know, they went in there and retrieved items and stuff. I had a base named Beverly. It was a like super gorgeous orangey gold, sparkly finish Washburn base. Was a 5-string. She was a little bit scorched, but she was fine, and went on into the care of some other people, and I ain't too sure what happened to Beverly, to be honest. So last night I got to looking at this picture, specifically this part of this picture. This is from 1908, right? Well, some changes were made to this part back here, and there's some windows that ain't there that should be there, both here and here. And I took some side-by-side screenshots of photos, showing you those photos and kind of going over like what changes were made and like what's up with that. And I think I'm going to be getting to that in the next session.